Sean Connery, the first actor to portray James Bond on the big screen, set a high standard with his performance in 1962's Dr. No. His portrayal became the benchmark for all future Bonds, characterized by rugged charm and sharp wit. That said, he was openly critical in later interviews about who he thought was the least effective Bond successor. Join us in the Battle of the Bonds to discuss who truly mastered the blend of wit, style, and box office success. Factsverse presents the actor Sean Connery said was the worst as James Bond. When Sean Connery first stepped into the impeccably tailored suit of James Bond in Dr. No, few could have predicted the cinematic icon he'd become. Connery imbued Bond with a gritty realism and lethal charm, whether trading quips over cocktails or battling sinister villains. His humor became a trademark, the witty one-liner before dispatching a henchman. Connery solidified his status as the definitive Bond over 5 films that decade, including fan favorites like Goldfinger, cementing catchphrases like shaken not stirred into the cultural lexicon. When he retired from the role after 1967's You Only Live Twice, producers selected model George Lazenby for a solitary appearance in On Her Majesty's Secret Service. But the franchise lured back Connery for one more outing in 1971's Diamonds Are Forever. By then, some felt the over-the-top plots and gadgets betrayed Connery's grittier spy. When Roger Moore took the reins in 1973's Live and Let Die, Connery dismissed his successor's approach as parody. Quote, "You can't fight intelligence," he famously quipped. Where Connery brought rugged masculinity, Moore embodied urbane charm. His Bond relied more on wits, less on brawn. Moore's 7 films as Bond often plunged into self-aware humor where Connery played things straight. To Connery, Moore put laughs above credibility, an unthinkable sin for purists. But with raised eyebrows and double entendres, Moore won over 1970s audiences. Stellar box office and praise for efforts like The Spy Who Loved Me proved his Bond was nobody's fool. Off-screen, the actors were friends, just with differing philosophies on how to play the renowned MI6 agent. They joked in interviews over who made the better Bond. After retiring, Moore called Connery's early films the pinnacle, although he cheekily ranked himself above George Lazenby, the forgotten Bond. Moore later praised successor Timothy Dalton for capturing Connery's intensity. When Moore passed in 2017, Connery issued a touching eulogy for his former co-star, proving that Bond actors share a special fraternity. The Craig era has ignited heated debates anew over what constitutes definitive Bond material. Connery set the standard all successors chase. Moore notched the most films while diverging tonally from Connery's template, a choice some fans adore while purists consider sacrilege. Yet Connery and Moore together charted Bond's evolution on screen, from Cold War detective to globe-trotting super spy. Thanks to their contrasting eras, fans can choose between 2 flavors of Bond while appreciating the wit and charm both legendary actors epitomized. Their good-natured rivalry gave generations the license to thrill. Connery's perspective on Moore's Bond. As the original embodiment of Bond, Sean Connery had a paternal protectiveness over the franchise, including his very defined opinions on the tonal shift after he retired. Though bosom buddies with Roger Moore off-screen, he had intense critiques regarding Moore's overly casual approach, which he felt betrayed the essence of Bond's danger and intrigue. In archived interviews from 1981, Connery aired his qualms explicitly, believing the scripts pandered too heavily towards absurd humor and camp, which eroded Bond's gritty gravitas. He pointed to specific scenes in For Your Eyes Only, played for cheap punchlines rather than ratcheting up suspense. In Connery's view, the character deserved better than to be the butt of jokes, lacking the tension and thrills that made 1960s Bond so riveting. He saw Moore's films as glorified parodies, trading thrills for easily earned laughs from increasingly ridiculous scenarios. Connery took Bond's legacy personally, making Moore's lighter touch feel like a personal affront. The Battle of the Bonds. The year 1983 delivered a one-of-a-kind scenario unseen before. two Bond adventures pit against each other across the summer box office. Roger Moore helmed the official Eon production Octopussy, while Sean Connery starred in the rival Never Say Never Again, a title emerging from a complex legal standoff. Dubbed Battle of the Bonds, hyped surged to fever pitch at this embarrassment of espionage riches. Given Connery's ongoing resentment towards producer Albert Broccoli, many saw the dueling films as a referendum on the soul of Bond and an outlet for Connery to reclaim creative control after years of lingering resentments. The fact that Moore had first refusal on Never Say Never, but declined out of loyalty to the producers, only reinforced perceptions that this was personal and pitched original Bond versus current pretender. The once-in-a-lifetime showdown enraptured popular imagination. Who embodied the true Bond? Media outlets could not resist framing the standoff in gladiatorial terms, with box office takings as the final arbiter of public favor. Away from the manufactured hype painting them as arch rivals, off-screen Sean and Roger nurtured a thriving personal relationship and mutual respect. Both understood the cynical media attempt to stoke comparisons for easy headlines that ignored their friendship. Privately, they forged a gentleman's agreement, refusing to personally undermine each other or comment on perceived rivalries in the name of good taste. This agreeable rapport meant coordination to space out their dueling release dates rather than direct competition, understanding simultaneous debuts could harm both films' commercial prospects. Box Office Showdown. With Moore's Octopussy debuting first in June 1983, followed by Connery reprising his signature role in Never Say Never Again that October, the Box Office Showdown fixated audiences. After a summer of relentless media framing their efforts as a battling title to cement the best Bond, box office receipts became the final arbiter. Moore's Octopussy edged ahead as the commercial winner. To some, this verified Moore and his lighter-hearted take as the preferred crowd-pleasing Bond of the era. Yet, the mere fact both films scored hits despite dividing audiences suggests renewed interest in the Bond crown writ large, regardless of the actor. Their legacies. Though immortalized as Agent 007, Sean Connery and Roger Moore enjoyed acclaimed careers that stretched decades beyond their Bond tenures. What united them was how James Bond shaped global perception of them as icons. Before being cast originally, Connery had struggled to break through, often cast as a muscle-bound eye candy. His magnetism as Bond made him an A-list marquee name virtually overnight. Roger Moore initially made his mark on the small screen as the dashing crime-solving hero of hit UK show The Saint. He knowingly leaned into humor and unflappable charm when he assumed Bond duties. Today, both men's careers remain defined by donning Bond's tuxedo, their era-specific interpretations collectively building today's perception of 007. Now it's time to hear from you. Who is your favorite Bond of all time? Let us know in the comments section below.